Hello students, welcome to class. I am your cultural and creative art tutor, Ms. Taufikat Korodo, and our topic for today is tie and dye. By the end of the lesson, you will be able to define tie and dye, mention the tools and materials used in tie and dye, mention different techniques used in tie and dye making fabrics, and also state the procedures for making tie and dye. Now let's define tie and dye. Tie and dye is a method of fixing ink dye firmly on a fabric through tying and stitching in order to prevent the absorption of dye solution. It is also a method of tying and dyeing a fabric in order to create a design through the dyeing process. And if we all can remember, I also explained the meaning of tie and dye in our first topic, which is crafts. Okay, tie and dye is also a creation of explosion of colors on a fabric through tying and dyeing. Let's move to the tools and materials used in making tie-dye. Number one, we need 100% cotton fabric. The reason for this is because cotton can easily absorb water or can absorb liquid. So, and our dye solution is liquid. We need something or a kind of fabric that can absorb dye quickly. Dye stuff. Dye stuffs are colors, dye colors, red, yellow, green, and the likes. Hydrosulfite or sodium sulfite. This is a very coercive and harsh chemical, and we need to handle this with care when doing tie and dye. Caustic soda, we use this together with hydrosulfite to dye our fabrics. And we need water, we need bucket or bowl to mix our dye solutions in. We need rope or twine that we use to tie our fabrics. We need rubber gloves to protect our hands. Like I said, hydrosulfite is very harsh, so we need to wear rubber gloves to protect our hands. We need kettle or pot. This is used to boil our water for dyeing. And we need turning stick because we cannot use our hands to turn our chemicals. We need a turning stick. And then we need a stove or a cooker, and this is going to be used to boil our water. Now let's talk about techniques in tie-dye. Number one on our list is spiral technique, and this technique involves twisting a piece of fabric into a spiral shape, and this can be done by placing either a stick or a spoon at the center of our fabric, twisting it clockwise or anti-clockwise to give us that kind of spiral shape, and then we then bind it together with either rubber band or with rope, and followed by drizzling or pouring our dye solution on our fabric, and that is going to give us a very beautiful and colorful spiral design like the one in front of us or like the one right on our screen. Number two, we have knotting, and this technique involves tying sections of fabric into tight knots, and this can be done by either using marbles or stones or granite. Putting it in our fabrics and then using either rubber band or rope to just tie them together to give us this kind of knot. Our stones or our marbles might not be of the same size or the same shape. That is fine. That is going to give our tie-dye fabric a different and unique, beautiful color. And once that is done, we either dip our fabric into our dye solution or we pour or drizzle our dye solution on our fabric. Number three, we have folding technique. This technique is the simplest technique in tie-dye making, and it involves folding our fabric in a specific way before dipping it into our dye solution. The more we fold, the more beautiful our design turns out. We can either fold it in square form or in triangular form. It doesn't matter. Just know that folding technique is very simple and it's easy to achieve. For number four, we have marbling technique. This technique is quite tricky because it has to do with squeezing or merging or, you know, cramping our fabric together to achieve this kind of technique, and then we go ahead to bind it together with either rubber band or with rope before pouring or drizzling our dye solution on it. And once this design is achieved or this technique is achieved, it creates a beautiful explosion of different colors. And one thing is, all techniques in tie and dye are easy to achieve. It only depends on how determined you are to make it. Now let's talk about the procedures for making tie and dye. Number one, wash your fabric. And this is to remove industrial starch and also to remove dirt from our fabric. Number two, we boil our water. Three, tie your desired tying methods. From the tie-dye techniques that I mentioned earlier, pick any one of your choice and then tie your fabric accordingly. Number four, measure chemicals and dye in a bucket. Number five, pour boiling water in the mixture and stir with a turning stick. Number six, Dip the dyed fabric in the dye bath and leave for 5 minutes. Number 7, then rinse the fabric twice to wash off the chemicals from the fabric. While number 8, loosen the rope from the fabric to reveal the design. Then number 9, spread the fabric to dry and iron accordingly. We can see that making tie and dye fabrics is very easy if you follow these 9 steps correctly. Here is our assignment. Number 1, define tie dye. Number 2, mention 3 techniques in tie and dye. Alright, we've come to the end of the class for today. Thank you very much for listening and see you in the next class.